And there were colored eggs all over the back lot here for the kids to hunt and find. There was even an Easter bunny, even to me. And there was noise, wonderful noise coming in. And as they were leaving, I could hear them walking by and chattering and talking. I had some of the lights on in here so that they could see, just in case there was somebody that might think they wanted to go to church. And I couldn't help thinking, looking at the parking lot full of vehicles, which means that there was about one vehicle for every person, including the 2- and 3-year-olds. You know, how wonderful the day will be when that is the way it is here. Also, because I was here, I spent some time doing a Bible study that I didn't plan on doing, and totally changed my sermon. But it actually also dovetails with that experience. Because as I read it, and it was from a commentary I don't use all that often. It's no longer new, but it was new about 15 years ago. Series of commentaries called Feasting on the Word. And the problem with it is that I loaded it on my Kindle, and since there's like 12 different volumes, and for each year there's 3 or 4 volumes, finding a particular Sunday on my Kindle in a particular book, I'm not that techy, folks, I'm not. But what I discovered was that if I went to Amazon, where I unfortunately bought these from, and found the right volume and clicked on that, it would pop up on my computer and I could read it. And it was much easier to find in the computer than on the Kindle. So I actually was able to access this and started reading, and started with the first reading from Isaiah, which is actually, Isaiah was written by at least 3 and more likely 5 or 6 different people, even though it's all called Isaiah. And this, Isaiah 43 is towards one of the later Isaiahs who were writing. And so I began reading the commentary for there, and I was struck with, oh, this is what needs to be preached this Sunday, and probably every Sunday for the next several months, years, I don't know. Because what the commentary brought out was, first of all, the setting. You know, we tend to pick this up and read and think, oh, it's 2022. You know, we forget that we're reading something that was from BC, before the Christian era, before the Common Era, some 200, 300, 400 years. And so we forget the setting. So the setting of this Isaiah writing is the Israelites have been established, the people have been established in the land. They have been taken over by Egypt, sent as slaves in Egypt. Moses has arisen, has brought them back to the promised land. They have been reestablished in that promised land. And then various nations have sought to take them over, many of whom then re-exiled the Israelites, because one of the ways of controlling land was to get rid of the people who were living in the land and bring your own people into the land. And so the Israelites had once again been removed from the land, sent out into various other parts of the world. And then the king of Persia takes over the land of Israel. And Cyrus, the king of Persia, was an interesting king because he had a different idea. He did not think that you needed to remove everybody in order to claim the land for yourself. And he respected other people's religion and felt that he would have better control over a land if he left people there and did things for them. And so Cyrus, the king of Persia, calls the people of Israel back to the promised land and offers to restore and rebuild their temple, their center of worship for them. And it is in that context that Isaiah, the portion that we're reading today, is written. Thus says the Lord, who makes a way in the sea and a path in the mighty waters, who brings out chariot and horse, army and water. They lie down, they cannot rise, they are extinguished, quenched like a wick. Do not remember the former things, or consider the things of old. This portion of Isaiah begins with a recollection, a recall of Moses leaving Egypt when, if you remember, Pharaoh's armies were drowned in the sea. Then Isaiah has God say, do not remember the former things or consider the things of old. I am about to do a new thing. That's the first key. I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. The exact opposite of the experience of the Israelites when they fled Egypt. When they fled Egypt, it was God sent the waters up. Now it's God sends the dry land and restores the people to the land and brings water to the land so that the land may be productive. The wild animals will honor me, the jackals and ostriches, for I give water in the wilderness, rivers in the desert, to give drink to my chosen people, the people whom I formed for myself, so that they might declare my praise. Now, in this passage, we see three important things that instruct us for our life today. As we sit half online, half the people here, strange times, our children aren't back yet. And so it is important that we recall in this story, we are much more like the Israelite people than we might want to think. We have been in a time of exile. We have been through and still are in a pandemic that has changed our lives and the life of the world forever. Forever. But God says, I am about to do a new thing. God never stops acting. God acted and was acting in the world of the Israelites in the time of Moses. God was acting in the time of Cyrus and the restoration of the people in the temple. God was acting in 1965. God was acting in 2010. God was acting in 2018. And God was acting in 2020, 2021. And now we are in 2022. And God is saying to us, as things seem to go back to some familiarity of congregating together, of interacting in person, God calls us to see that God is doing a new thing. God is not going to restore us to the glory days of the 1950s, which is the hope of most parishes. Oh, if we could just go back when Sunday schools were bursting, when everybody in town went to church, if we could just go back to that. We have lived in a very different world from that for the last 70 years, but we failed to notice. We failed to notice that it is not the norm to go to church anymore. It is not the norm to know Jesus Christ. Oh, people may say they know Jesus Christ and believe him as their Lord and Savior, but they know nothing other than those magic words. They know nothing about following Jesus or being Jesus' people. And so the first lesson in today's reading is that we are moving into a future. A new future, but not one we need to be afraid of. Only one where we need to be paying attention and looking for, where is God acting? What is God calling us to do? What new thing is God creating? Again, Isaiah, God is bringing the people once again from exile. We do well to ponder our own exile over the past few years. God is bringing us out of that exile, but not to return to what was formerly, but to a new thing. And in order to do that, we need to remember our past and honor the past, but also to look honestly at the things that needed to change in the past that we ignored because we were comfortable. And that as we look and ponder the past, we must identify the things that we need to leave behind. The things that we may have loved and treasured, but that will no longer work for us. And finally, we need to remember that the past is the past, and the future is where God is present now. And that in that knowledge there lies hope. This commentary said, our passage preserves the delicate balance between providence and grace. Of course, the past was in God's hands, and its benefits are not to be denied. The future will not look like the past, or it will not look like the past, or it will look like the past radically reshaped. Looking back at what has been, we move ahead to what will be, confident in the mercy of God, trusting God's faithfulness, and assuming surprise. I love that, assuming surprise. Knowing that there are good things ahead that we have not yet imagined, that we do not yet know, and preparing ourselves to accept that surprise rather than to cling and demand things go back to the past. And actually, both our reading from Philippians and our gospel reading echo the same message. In Philippians, Paul is listing what a noble religious person he was in the past. And he was a noble, religious, well-meaning, totally dedicated person. And he saw in that the need to eradicate the Christian faith. Well-meaning and dedicated until he meets the risen Christ. And in meeting so, Paul is called to let go of all the things that he treasured, all of the things that he devoted his whole life to, in order to embrace a new understanding of God, the understanding of God revealed to him in Jesus Christ. And this one who was the foremost persecutor of the Christians becomes the foremost missionary of the Christian church. God does something new and totally different for Paul. And in the gospel today, Mary is the one who understands what is about to befall Jesus. She is the one who is able to read right now. It says we're 6 days before the Passover, 6 days out, a little over a week. Next Sunday would be 6 days before the Passover. Yeah, well, no, next Thursday will be 6 days from the Passover. And so, but Mary, everyone is feeling great. Everybody is feeling good, although Jesus is concerned. But they know they're about to enter Jerusalem for to celebrate the Passover, the heritage that they, as good Jews, have, even though they follow Jesus. But Mary is able to perceive that you can't cling to the past and that God is doing a new thing through the hands of those who will kill Jesus. And so each of these readings encourages you and me to look for God not in the past, but in the future, and to look for new ways to bring people to know Jesus Christ. And in many ways, that is to look for very old ways, because you and I right now are living in a time when faith is about as precarious as it was for those first Christians. when Christianity was not the norm, and when soon, in the next week, Holy Week, even those who were attracted to Jesus will fall away out of fear for their own harm. And so we are invited in these readings to recognize the glory of the past and God working in the past, but even more to allow them to inform us to go into a future in which God is present and God will provide for us. Let us stand and reaffirm